Hi, everybody. I'm Meryl Rose. Great to have you with us today. You know, so many people are lost in the hustle and bustle of their daily life, their schedule, their family schedule, their career, that the day-to-day is just a blur. Well, we're going to help you make a dent in that and give you the motivation to change direction so that you can discover a more creative and fulfilled life. Jessica Turner is a popular blogger and married mom of 3 who works full-time, and she's living proof that this really is possible. It is so great to have you with us today.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so people probably look at you and say, you do it all. How in the world do you manage?
I'm tired. No.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
Yeah, you know, I think it is learning to say no, and it's being okay with things being just good enough. You know, my house is not pristine, magazine quality. You know, there's always a little bit of chaos, but it is kind of finding that sweet spot of where am I making time for myself? How am I serving my family? Figuring out work and all of those things, and it just works out.
And you have a very successful blog, too, that started about 10 years ago. The Mom Creative.
It is a blog that started out just talking about scrapbooking and the projects that I was working on in the crafting industry, and then it just sort of transformed into more of a lifestyle side as I gave birth to my son in 2008, and then had a daughter in 2011, and then just had a baby coming up on 1 year. New Year's Eve he was born, and so really kind of had that transformation just as my own life transformed.
And so from there, you had to figure out times during the day and during the evening that you could carve out little pockets of time for yourself. And you realized, I guess, that this is a need for all women.
It really is. Well, I was getting asked that all the time. How do you do it all? How are you finding time for scrapbooking and planning projects and doing Pinterest things and still mothering and working and all of those things? And the answer was that I was really using my fringe hours, that those pockets of time that other people were just wasting, honestly, or not really managing for themselves, I was using that for the things that I was really passionate about.
All right, so let's talk about what a fringe hour is, because I bet there are a lot of people out there right now who are saying, fringe hour, I don't have fringe 5 minutes.
Right, absolutely. So it's just a term. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm taking leisurely hours for myself every day, but it's using those pockets that often are just slipping away. You know, 45 minutes a day we spend waiting. So that would be a prime example of a fringe hour. That's a piece of time that you could really use for something that you love.
So you're in the carpool line, you're at the drugstore waiting to pick up a prescription or whatever.
Absolutely. Most of the time, what are we doing? We're looking at our phones, right? We're just scrolling through Facebook. Well, I surveyed 2,000 women to find out how they were using their time, what they were passionate about, what they wished they were doing, and the #1 thing was reading. Well, that's a really easy thing to do while you're waiting. You know, download that Kindle app or put a book in your purse, just be ready for it, and then use that time for something that you enjoy.
So a lot of it is about being intentional.
Absolutely. Really being intentional with where is my time going, how can I use it better, and how can I use it to do things that I love.
Yeah, the first step with that, I would think, is to really evaluate how am I spending each moment of the day for a week or so.
Absolutely. So time tracking is critical. Most people say to me, I don't even know where I would find this time. So where you're going to do that is go to fringehours.com and download a time tracker and literally track your time, just like we do often when we're trying to lose weight. We track our food or we track our steps. You're going to track where your time is going, not just those big things, but those little things like doing the laundry, doing the dishes, all of those things. And then you can really see how you're spending your time, where you need to say no, and what other things you could be doing better with how you're spending your days.
Did you find that the women you surveyed were embarrassed to find that they spent a lot of time either on social media or watching mindless TV or, you know, doing things that they probably, if asked, you know, would not want to be doing?
I think that certainly was part of it, that when women were asked how they spent their time, social media was a big one for them. Television was certainly something that people said. In the survey, they didn't track their time, so we didn't get that granular to know. But I think as people have gone through the fringe hours and have done the exercise, it's been alarming to them how much time they spent doing things that maybe are not the best use of their time.
Yeah, yeah. All right, you've got 2 books now.
That's right.
The original book was The Fringe Hours, which is a great read that really helps you evaluate you know, how you're spending your time and ways to carve out those pockets of time.
Absolutely.
But then there's the second book, which is called My Fringe Hours. That's kind of a workbook.
It really is. So I call it the gift book version. So it's really beautiful. It's full color. You know, a traditional trade book is 50,000 words. This is more like 10,000 words. And it's going to give you all the principles of the fringe hours and how to find your time, but really apply it to your own life. How do you make time for yourself? What are your own passions? What are your own giftings? And what are your own struggles? So by the end of it, you're going to really have your personal manifesto, if you will, for making time for your passions.
Why is it so important for us to fill up our own tanks first before we start worrying about serving other people.
It's that oxygen mask philosophy. You know, if you are giving to everyone and everything except yourself, eventually you're going to hit rock bottom. Eventually you're going to be exhausted and cranky and empty, right? And so you've got to pour into yourself, take care of yourself, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, so that then you can be the best version of yourself, so that you can have all of those other hats just filled the way that they should be to the best of their ability.
Yeah, you call that self-care.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important goal for all of us, and particularly for women.
Absolutely, and it's not just a buzzword, right? Like, it's not just something that sounds good in theory, but it's very, very important. You know, I asked a woman at a conference that I was speaking at, you know, when was the last time you lost track of time doing something that you loved? And her answer was, before I had kids. And I said, well, how old is your oldest child? And she said 13. It had been more than 13 years since she had lost track of time doing something that she loved. And you could just see in her face and her eyes that she was drained, that she needed that time to pour into her own passions, her own giftings.
Yeah, and if you do that, then you're a better version of yourself to be able to be that good person for your family, for your work people, for anybody you encounter.
Absolutely. You know, I talk with moms often, I guess because I'm a mom myself, and that's who reads a lot of my content. And something that I say to them is, you know, if your kids get older, my kids are little right now, so we're not having these conversations yet, but as they get older and they're in high school and they're doing lots of activities, if you saw them go nonstop and they weren't getting enough sleep and they weren't going to the doctor when they were sick and they weren't doing what they loved, they were just doing all of these things that had filled their schedule, you would say, you need to stop.
Right.
We need to reevaluate. Something has got to give, and we need to do that for ourselves, and we need to model that for our own children and for those around us as well.
Makes so much sense. All right, we've got a lot of great stuff to cover here. Thank you, Jessica.